So, okay, so this is the ground rules. There might be a few people that want to make a couple of statements up here. Or media, you are now allowed to ask any question you want. And I don't really have an opening statement. You guys can ask us anything you want.
I have a quick ground rule, though.
Oh, Sam has a quick one.
There's just two ground rules, really, that I have. The first ground rule is that I need, if there becomes a back and forth, if you have a question, you can have a follow-up question, that's fine. But if it becomes back and forth, we're going to table it for another day so that we can move on to other questions.
Well, also make sure people answer short. You know.
All right, the second rule is your answer cannot be longer than 2 minutes.
1 minute.
No other rules.
So, and the audience, if this goes really quick and you want to ask some questions, you can. But this is really the time for this is the press. So please let them go. And I still am curious who all those people are back there. But that's okay. Okay, so did you put the mic out to them? Okay, way to go. Now I don't.
Hello. My name is Anna Dubanyevich, and I'm with the Clark County Republican Party. And I have a quick question. Today, the Department of Homeland Security is actively looking for people to come and help them develop an AI, an artificial intelligence, to help investigate to help with the investigative process, focused on detecting fentanyl and combating child exploitation. Now, so I'm just wondering, what are the sheriffs thinking about this AI? Do you think that the Department of Homeland Security is going to come out with one that's actually going to help you investigate problems in your county? Regarding specifically, this was on CNBC, so specifically I'm quoting them, that the AI will target fentanyl and child exploitation.
All right, you use Homeland Security and intelligence in the same sentence, so I object. If they wanted to stop the fentanyl, they could have stopped the border a long time ago.
I'm sorry. So I see them developing AI. The way it's currently being done, it's basically going to develop a retail tracking, like the way people follow the tires that are shipped out of China. So all the AI is going to do is just track, is create a retail tracking, because they're just going to track who sells it, who buys it, or whatever. So they're not really trying to stop it. They're just going to be tracking it at the retail level.
Again, Department of Homeland Security and Intelligence. That does worry me because fentanyl, there's all kinds of different versions of fentanyl. They got liquid, they got powder form. And if they would stop it at the border, we wouldn't have to go through all this. But AI is only as accurate as the information you're putting into it, just like any other computer.
Ditto.
Next question.
Close the border, and we'll deal with these druggies. And what we need to do on these drug dealers, now this might shock some because of my actually I lean right. Death penalty on major drug dealers.
Go back that way. Absolutely right. Garbage in, garbage out. This is the problem with AI. These are programs, these are algorithms that are programmed. So if you have bad information going in, you're going to have bad information coming out. I'm concerned about any, especially law enforcement tactic, Department of Homeland Security, in any type of federal entity that is using AI in which to develop tactics to combat anything that is creating a crisis that we're having to deal with. Because again, garbage in, garbage out. We can never trust that the information is coming in is actually going to be the correct data. And therefore, I'm always going to suspect the outcome.
I would like to remind everybody that there's 3 branches of government, and there's this group called the legislative branch. And so if we want to deal with laws relating to the threats that we face, we need to discuss that and have open debates in America. And I challenge all of you in the mainstream press, as I do, to create an open, vigorous debate and press our legislators to do something appropriate about it as needed.
Next question. All right, my name's JD, originally from Texas. And I understand that sometimes the sheriffs may be a little apprehensive about being involved because of politics and politically how it might affect them. My question is this: do the federal government
Is there anybody in the media first? We don't mind the citizens ones afterwards, but the media's got to be first. They've already done a bunch of interviews, and CBS just left. So anybody from the media that wants to ask us questions, raise your hand. Okay, go.
Hello, Casey Whalen reporting for the inlandnwreport.com and other independent outlets. Through public records requests, we know that groups like the IREHR, the Institute for Research, Education, and Human Rights, as well as the SPLC and ADL, have been proactively targeting the CSPOA. So my question is, how can you combat this anti-American fervent movement to target constitutional organizations such as yours?
Who do you want to answer that?
This is an opening question to anybody. I know that they've been targeting you, Mr. Mack, as well as Sam Bushman.
I think Mike Lindell qualifies for some of that,
For sure.
about SPLC and ADL calling us all these names all the time. Yeah, media and the other groups, but so.
Well, we know that these groups have been proactively targeting you, namely Chuck Tanner at the IREHR, calling you anti-government and white nationalists, et cetera.
Well, you know, when they're attacking and calling names, you guys, it's a good thing. You gotta look at it as a good thing because it gets the word out of what's going on. I mean, it's the only word we got. You're not gonna have Fox News here telling the world about this, right? So you gotta embrace what we have to deal with. The media, by attacking, gets the word out. We're in a time where people see through this. Even the people on the left see through it. They know it's all fake. They know the attacks, so they see through. That's how they get their news. They're going, wow, they're really doing something down there. So, you know, all these media that's here and all the attack stories that are wrote are actually going to help us. You're not going to be on Fox News or Newsmax or Salem Media. Those ships sailed. They, you know, why? Are they cowards? Yes. Are they lawfare? Yes. There's a lot of reasons. Are they in on it? Who knows? But I just think you got to embrace it and don't let it get to you and think of it as a good. Remember, all the bad things going on here, God uses everything for good. And, you know, so I just embrace it. You're not going to stop that. What are you going to do? Oh, don't do that. Don't attack us. And we don't have to defend ourselves. You don't have to defend yourself. That's it. You don't, you know. You embrace it and you take it and you just keep doing good. That's it. You know, period.
And I would add to that we need to keep doubling down on the truth. The Bill of Rights are nonpartisan, and the CSPOA is a civil rights organization, really. That's really what we are. And so we can't be intimidated. We will not bow to the largest crowds or the loudest voices. Fear is from the enemy. We know we're speaking truth, and we just need to be bold and just keep doubling down.
So on the topic of I call it the Soviet Poverty Law Center. It's a really interesting group. One of the things that I did personally to deal with the smears that they put out against good, decent, honorable Americans, one of the things that I work with is the Law Enforcement Intelligence Brief. It's an intelligence report that we send to every police chief and every sheriff in the country. And I did a big expose on the SPLC in there. And just a little bit of a recap. You can find it on the website. It's from the Law Enforcement Charitable Foundation. We looked at some of what the SPLC has argued in the past. I'll give you some examples. They called a Muslim one of the top anti-Muslim extremists. That's kind of interesting that a Muslim is an anti-Muslim extremist. They called a black law professor, Dr. Carol Swain, who I know and who I think very highly of. They said she was an enabler of white supremacy because she believes in border security. They called another friend of mine, who happens to be a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, married to a full-blooded Indian, a direct descendant of Sacagawea. She was registered as a member of the Cherokee tribe for many years, but decided to unenroll. She spent much of her life helping Indian communities defend themselves from federal tyranny. They labeled her the matriarch of the anti-Indian movement. So you've got a Muslim anti-Muslim extremist, an Indian anti-Indian movement leader. This is the level that the SPLC has descended to. They're a comedy show. And so we put this in a newsletter to law enforcement. I have talked to many law enforcement officials across the country. Very few serious people in law enforcement outside of the big cities and the swamp, if you will, take the ramblings of the SPLC seriously. Even a lot of the media has now realized how discredited they are. And to give you some perspective on how they call us the radicals, it's interesting. One guy they really, really like is a guy who founded a terrorist organization that bombed the Capitol, bombed the State Department, murdered police officers, bombed the funerals of those police officers. His name was Bill Ayers. You might remember him. The only reason he didn't go to jail was because he got off on a technicality. He was quite proud of his terrorism. So that's who the SPLC is. Even a lot of the actual civil rights leaders in this country have called it a charlatan group to extort people out of money and fearmonger. And the founder, Morris Dees, was exposed in court documents allegedly abusing and molesting his stepdaughter. So these are not the kind of people that law enforcement should be listening to. We have the truth. We have the facts. When they call us anti-government, it's quite simply a libel. I don't believe anybody, in fact, a lot of these people here are the government, but I don't believe anybody here on this stage is anti-government in any sense. We're anti-tyranny. We're pro-government when government's doing what it's supposed to do. So as Lindell said and others, we need to respond with the truth. Thankfully, there have been some lawsuits. The Muslim who was called an anti-Muslim extremist sued them, ended up getting millions of dollars from them. So we just keep using the truth, keep standing for what's right, and I think eventually they will become the laughingstock for everybody that they deserve to be.
And then a friend of Alex is sitting right next to him who happens to be blind. They called her racist, and you know what we did? We laughed at them.
Any other media questions?
Come on, Brother Steve.
Yes. Hi, I'm Lisa Bolden with the Patriots Free Press newspaper. I'm Lisa Bolden with the Patriots Free Press newspaper. And if we're successful in getting the voting machines outlawed or completely taken away, what will prevent states from, like, so Washington, when they did away with the voting machines, went to all mail-in ballots, which is no better. Is there a plan in place in case we don't have machines that we could eliminate mail-in ballots?
I'll answer that. You got Utah, which is just pure crime. It's all mail-in ballots, right? But they also couple with the machines. If you take the computers out of it, those ballots, that takes a lot of work for there's still going to be cheating with paper ballots, but you're not going to have. You would need a cabal of people, of hundreds of thousands, millions of people involved. And when you do a computer, you just need a small group. And it's not going to take away everything, but it's going to take away 95% of the problems with the computers. Those are in our voter rolls, our polling books. They're all interconnected. You take like Utah, there's pure mail-in ballots, and so there's still, let's say they stick with that it's all just early voting and mail-in ballots. They don't even have, I think you vote same day. You got to go in there. You're basically just putting it, or mailing it in there. It's just a mail-in. You just walked in and handed it to them. So, and by the way, Utah also is trying to get it where you text in your vote. I mean, these are disgusting. Where they're going, it's like, oh, you got your Apple ID. Why don't you just have Tim Cook? You give him all the votes. You know, in Utah, it's set before they probably know the winner 2 years from now already. It's all just make believe. It's a fairy tale. So you know, is it the answer? But with what they're doing there, you don't take those ballots there in Utah and count them. They don't do any counts, you know. And if you did that and you really did have mail-in votes and you had it where you did have to do a count, I guarantee you if they didn't have a computer, it's still going to be way closer to what it should be than with the computer, where you can punch in a number and it doesn't matter what those ballots say. Oh yeah, we did audits. You didn't do an audit. How are you going to audit this? We did audits where signatures didn't match on 250,000 ballots. So go, well, we're going to count them anyway because they're paper. It's disgusting. So, you know, but I will tell you, getting rid of the computers, which the countries around the world that have done that, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands did it after Clint Curtis said that he did the first algorithm steals in our elections here in the U.S. He admitted he did it. And the Netherlands said, well, how do I stop this? He said, you can't. Throw them in the ocean. And the Netherlands switched over to paper ballots in 5 months. Argentina beat them just this last year and did it in 4 months by one judge ruling. Taiwan, Ecuador, all these countries around the world. Then you have a whole nother set of countries where they've outlawed early voting. That's, you know, what you're talking about. You know, they know there's two big problems. They're early voting. Oh, early voting, what do you have it for? You know, and the countries have outlawed this. So there's other things there, but the machines are number one. And, you know, do we get rid of them all? We don't know. Only God knows that, but we're trying.
Yes, we get rid of all of the machines. My nonprofit, Free and Equal Elections, has been holding electoral reform symposiums for 10 years. I've met the people who handle the machines, whether they're Democrat, Republican, neutral, comptrollers, mayors, follow the money. Diebold, Dominion, they control these machines. These individuals in office have told me at our symposiums they've seen the numbers change in real time. Mail-in ballots, they're not good. The intent overseas, maybe there's a reason there. Having led the national efforts to try and stop the top two primary, Prop 14, in 2010 that is, in California, I firsthand saw the flaws of mail-in ballots where millions of dollars were pumped in to promote this ballot initiative, the top two primaries, an open primary, when in fact it's a closed primary, essentially Louisiana-style politics. Because of that mail-in ballot campaign, them lying so far out, they were able to win that by about a 2% margin when closer to the election, more than 60, 70% were against the top two primary. Mail-in ballots are not good. What is good is paper ballots with also blockchain voting. This is an idea together, not one or the other. But imagine you all casting a paper ballot, and when you do, you get a digit, a code, where you can go on a ledger to see that your vote counted. That's it. 8, 10, 20, whatever code. So you're going to cast that paper ballot, and on the blockchain ledger, you can see that your ballot was cast. If it's not there, then there's an issue. Blockchain voting will transform our elections and bring about political transparency, but I also support paper ballots, and at Free and Equal Elections, we bring the experts together because I'm open to even better ideas beyond blockchain in the future, and it's there and it's coming. Thank you.
I don't have anything else on that, but Zach Carter's still here. And Zach, I want you to come up while I'm thinking about it and you're still here. I want to take a picture with you. Because last time I saw him, he looked like a total hippie, and he doesn't now, so I want to take a picture of that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you finally got a haircut. Yeah. So
Any other questions from the media?
Wait, you got to.
Any media questions? Okay.
No, not me.
You from the media?
Rich Hubbard, publicist for Kane County, Utah, Committee of Safety. And I'm sad to say that I had to miss almost all the event. I was in court this morning observing for a gentleman there who wrongly accused, and I arrived here after the event. However, I am a member of the posse. I've followed several of you for years. Hosted Richard Mack 10 years ago when he came to Washington County, Utah. We did an event. He's nodding his head. So my question is, and please forgive me if you already covered this at length earlier, looking at this from the viewpoint of the man and woman in the street, what can we do, not to call out any particular sheriffs, but Mr. Lindell just pointed out some of the voting problems in Utah, and we definitely have sheriff problems there also. Education is a wonderful word, but realistically, without going head to head with them, what can we do to influence, to create positive change? I'm specifically addressing the sheriffs here, I suppose, but anybody else has the suggestion. We're kind of at wit's end. I should say this, and now it's a long question, but it just came to mind that our county, Kane County, Utah, excuse me, I get choked up. It's the third highest suicide rate in the country. Principally because these young kids, 16, 18 years old, are getting targeted by the sheriffs. Pull them over for whatever reason they can. The sheriffs, by the way, within the last year and a half, 2 years, had a celebration when they filled the jail. They said, hey, we're at 100%. And they had a party.
Okay, there's one rule
the
though,
sheriff.
make sure you get to your question.
My question is, what can we do?
What do you do?
Can we do as people in the street to influence without going head to head, which we've done also? What can we do what's being done that's effective? There's my question. What's already being done that's effective?
So let me just rephrase the question to make sure we're on the same page for a second. So you're saying that, hey, you know what, without going head to head with them, is there a way we can solve the problems that we face? Is that right? Okay, so it's impossible to get on the same page with people who do not believe what you believe or have respect for what you think or feel. So that's the first point. And the way we're going to solve that is we're going to have to all realize that we can learn to agree or disagree agreeably. And until we can get there, it's going to be hard. And the only way I know to do that is to build relationships of trust. Okay? If you can't build a relationship of trust, you'll never agree to disagree agreeably. And so I think building relationships of trust is one of the first keys. And what we as patriots oftentimes want to do is we walk into the sheriff and we want to say, Sheriff, you're a jerk. You're not constitutional. What the hell are you doing? And then we're like, hey, you need to listen to me. Don't you know Richard Mack and Sam Bushman and all these Alex and all these people? Come on, they know what they're talking about and you don't. You're not going to get anywhere. You might start a little different and be like, you know what? Hi, Sheriff. My name is Sam Bushman and I live in your county. And I, you know what, want to stand with you and support you and do the best I can. And if you are calm and patient and kind and let people learn as they can, if you give somebody a couple of years to learn and they don't, then you decide to reelect somebody else, that's your opportunity. But in the meantime, you need to give them every chance to learn, as we all have, and we all started somewhere. And at first, it's very hard to drive a stick-shift car, right? But then after a while, you can drive a stick-shift car and eat a cheeseburger and drink a milkshake and talk to your wife, right? What's the difference? Experience. And so you got to give some of these sheriffs a lot of grace, a lot of these public officials grace. They grew up in the government schools. You got to forgive them. They can't help it. And so you got to be patient and kind to build relationships of trust. And you got to think about how to win friends and influence people. I say that then to come to my summation here, which is then what we need to do is spend time with one another. Right? And we need to let people understand that just because I believe a certain way about the Constitution, that doesn't mean my sheriff agrees with me or believes exactly like I do. And what you got to remember is even if your sheriff's far from perfect, let's say he's a 70 on a 100 scale, right? You want him to be 100, but he's a 70. I'd be careful because you might end up with a sheriff that's a 30. So it's a relative discussion, and what we've got to do is move the chains toward liberty one little yard at a time. You can't solve it all and hope on Hail Marys all the time. You've got to move the chain a little bit at a time. And the only way you're going to do that is build greater numbers. The greater numbers we have, the more effective we will be.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. Lady. My name is Ivan Rakelin. I'm known as the Deep State Marauder. Since this is a media question, it's in my capacity as the host of the Rakelin Report on WVW TV and on Rumble. So what if hypothetically I communicated with Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi and convinced them to get Elon Musk to do what's known as the mother of all Twitter files, where he releases the direct messages for the lifetime of the account of all the federal government actors, previous and current, that have weaponized against all of us citizens throughout the entire country, and then provided that data to all 3,143 jurisdictions, counties, and county equivalents, to you sheriffs and district attorneys with geotagged evidence showcasing their involvement in seditious conspiracy, in Fourth Amendment violations, First Amendment violations, and Fifth Amendment violations. What would you be willing to go to the maximum level to create consequences for these federal actors?
Wow. Yeah. No, if the evidence is there, then the constitutional sheriff, or as far as that goes, any sheriff, even if they don't claim to be constitutional, has a duty to follow up on that and press charges against them. But here's the catch-all. We can go ahead and make the arrest or send in the probable cause statement to the prosecutor, but I happen to know a couple prosecutors, you'll never see it happen. You'll never see it happen. And that's the problem. You have to have law enforcement and you have to have prosecutors in the willing to work together and get this done. And unfortunately, our prosecutors in a lot of cases have been dumbed down literally, and they don't want to get political, they don't want to get involved in all this nonsense. But without the prosecutor pressing the charges based on our probable cause of the investigation, what are you going to do? That's the problem. So the prosecution and the courts, let's say the prosecutor presses the charges. Then you got to deal with the courts, with the judges. And they're elected as well. They could be conservative, they could be middle of the road, or they could be screaming liberals. The point being is, it's an uphill battle, but it needs to be fought. That's the bottom line.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Fifth Amendment talk about grand jury indictments? Oh, it's a grand jury indictment. If it's infamous or, can you help me out with that, Mac? I can't remember the exact wording. But we're not going to be able to just go out and arrest. We're going to have to do a grand jury indictment, just like what the Constitution says.
Yeah. In your state. In our state, there's no grand jury. It goes strictly to the... Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah, good point.
So I can only speak for the state of New Mexico. In our state's constitution, we actually do have sheriff's grand juries or citizens' grand juries. During the COVID and shortly after, when our governor's order had expired, it takes a petition from the electorate or from the citizens that you have to have at least, I believe it was 1/8 of the registered voters or that voted in the last election. We'd actually done this in the state of New Mexico, brought grand jury indictment information and petitions. Unfortunately, we have a governor who appointed 3 of the 5 Supreme Court justices in our state. So of course, the Supreme Court immediately issued an order that they would not be hearing any citizens' grand juries, no indictments and or petitions for grand jury indictments. So in speaking from experience, from what the sheriff was talking about, these are some of the things that we have hurdles with. It's easy for me to go out and convince my citizens in Sierra County, New Mexico, that we need to get on board with this. But when you actually have the judiciary and or the prosecutor, or the state prosecutor, the attorney general, who refuses, adamantly refuses to do their job, or a court that issues an injunction saying that we will not listen to these. This is where the real problem is in our country today, and it's why our justice system needs a complete overhaul.
Hello, Sheriffs. Just to piggyback off what Ivan Raiklin said, I'm George Ballantine from the Big Mig Show. So in order to help, I think, facilitate you guys, and once you make these arrests, and actually for these district attorneys or attorney generals that do not want to move forward, is we as social media influencers who have shows, radio shows, or podcasts, is to come up with a media campaign, just like the MSN does with their narrative, and start hammering it day after day after day, and put their names out there and expose them. But somehow we all have to, like, somebody has to take lead, certain people have to take lead, media, we could take lead. I know enough influencers, podcasts, Ivan, I know between all of us, we know enough that we can hammer this. Corinne too, right here. That's the way we got to do it. So we just have to collaborate together. Can we do that?
All right. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment of or indictment of a grand jury. That's where I was going with that. So insurrection would be considered the capital or infamous.
Well, last time I saw you, I believe, was in New York. Thank you. You came to our free and equal elections presidential debate, and the question before I didn't get the mic in time about unity and coming together, this gentleman right here I wanted to address, and yours as well. It's time to create our own media. And in doing that, there needs to and will be a coalition beyond dozens to hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of organizations, individuals, media, every type of organizations to companies, to all kind of people coming around an idea, recognizing that there are more things that we agree on in the world than not. It's independent media like you have such a powerful following, and so many others that I have learned, and I didn't mention during my speech earlier today, that Free and Equal Elections' third 2024 presidential debate will take place July 11th here in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest. And Freedom Fest is an event that's been going on 10, 15 years, and the moderators that we may be having to the political correspondents, is great to hear Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald have been at Freedom Fest in the past, and many more. I anticipate being a part of the debate. So we have to, and we'll open up this dialogue of not even just the candidates starting on presidential levels, but all levels. The dozens of candidates I saw here today, the conversations of bringing them together, right, left, and united. And in order to do that, it's going to take a truly independent movement that catches fire overnight. When an idea comes, nothing will get in its way. So, and great communication, that's how we bring about unity, and there's a big vision on its way. I really want to thank Sheriff Mack here and his team, CSPOA, please. I think we met 10 or 15 years ago, and I was, mid-late 20s, and this man has been a huge hero in standing up against not only the Clinton administration, but his integrity and his will, and meeting his wife a decade ago, and just being an anchor amongst one another. I'm so grateful to know you're still here today. And these gentlemen and these sheriffs, I foresee they're going to be a part of something big that unites our country. And they're going to come in. There's going to be a call of up to hundreds of constitutional sheriffs to not only protect our people, but to educate them. And I am so much peace and so much love and compassion on the horizon. I want to end on this note that love is greater than fear, and love wins. Thank you.
Next question from the media.
Yeah, I'm no media, but I want to ask a question. I'm a Republican member of Clark County. My name is Jim Lee, and my question is for you is simply is how difficult if we can completely get rid of the domaining system. Okay, the reason I ask that, if we believe there is a fair election this year, the only condition is completely get rid of the domaining system. Otherwise, a lot of people, they don't trust. They don't believe there is a fair election will happen in this country. And this is, people also believe this is the last chance. Last time U.S. has a fair election, if we have. Otherwise, we'll be never have any election. Okay, that's my point. So my question is, Taiwan, their election only spent 2 hours. They completely, one day, count all the ballots, completely without any issue. Why we couldn't do it, American, United States? We couldn't do it, why? Why that's so difficult? So my question, go back to you guys, is how difficult we can completely get rid of dominion system. If we needed to pack the government, we can do it. Why we don't do it? Because this dominion system is completely data changed. That's a cheating system. We don't need it. Thank you.
Well, how hard it is here, that's what we've been fighting for 3 years. I got about $40 million stuck into that fight. But we're going to have even better than Taiwan, is what I believe, because one of the things, well, they have camera too, but we're going to have this under camera. Realize that that's also your audit. You know, you got a problem, you just rewind the tape. We all watch through. You got ballots assigned, and there's my vote. There's my vote. And if it's counted wrong, you rewind the tape. It's very simple. You know, and then they'll try and say, well, Taiwan, you know, how they took and they, called out each vote, but, and they'll say, well, we have more tickets on there than that. Well, it doesn't matter. Our systems we've set up here, which I believe we've got a couple different hand counting systems. I believe they're the best in the world. One of them was tried last year in Osage County, Missouri. It got done the same time as the machines. Democrats and Republicans working together side by side, and it got done with 100% accuracy. So it can be done here, and it's going to be done here. We're going to get to that point. But, obviously we're fighting an evil that's beyond anything the world has ever seen. You think they're attacking me since August because I want to overturn the 2020 election? No, it's because I have a plan to get rid of the machines and go to paper. That's why they put the biggest attack on myself and my company that the world's ever seen. It was even worse than 2021. Well, what changed? Well, what changed is they know that's their tool to take the world. 51 countries have succumbed to the machines, the last one being Brazil, my good friend, President Bolsonaro. And when you can take a guy fresh out of prison for crimes against his own country, the cartels take him out, no paper, just machines. They could have been hollow with 2 little lights on them. And at the end they go, and the winner is Lula, fresh out of prison. He wins by, you have no idea. And they win, what was the common denominator of all the computers in the world? You don't get to look inside them. Well, because it's proprietary technology. Well, really? One of our machine companies, Dominion, is made over in Serbia. I've sent planes over there to extract whistleblowers twice now. And they get, this is disgusting. What's, our Supreme Court case. This is why it's so important. This Friday, the Supreme Court case that we have there that I started in 2022, they consider it on Friday. They've deemed our elections critical infrastructure our government has. If these justices can't look at the evidence that says right there, we found decryption keys inside the machine. That's like having a bank vault with the combination written on it. My ATM card, here's my passcode, have a ball. Your computer at home, here's your password. You know, all of our cell phones, where you can all tied together. I mean, these computers, they have to go. Those justices, I believe, and we all need to pray, when they accept this case on Friday, I believe they will vote 9-0, just like they did in Colorado for the nonsensical. They're there to protect our country. That's the last line of defense, those Supreme Court justices. And I believe you'll have the Democrats, the Republicans, and even the compromise ones, where they're all going to vote 9-0, because what you're going to see in that case, if all of you really take a look at it, you can't vote any other way. It's like, okay, they used software that was flipped, which is a felony, and they have decryption keys in there, and these are the companies running our elections. It's like they're going to vote 9-0. Now, will they accept it? I don't know. If they don't, we have another plan. We're not stopping there. We don't just be like Alan Dershowitz, because he gets sanctioned, goes home like a coward and leaves us stranded. Can I say that on stage? Coward to the country. At first I thought, what a brave guy. He's a Democrat. He's been in law for so long, and he gets all on board with this, because this wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. Our election platforms to get rid of these machines and go to paper is critical to every person in the world, not just in the United States. And Alan was on board. Boy, as soon as they give him a little sanction, he runs off with my money and he goes, I can't do anymore. I got sanctioned. I'm a lawyer. What if they take away my license? Well, what if? What if we lose our country, Alan? Do you have anything left? We get one shot at this, and we will take that shot, and we will be better than Taiwan. Because, here's countries like that. We have the worst election platforms in the world, not just in any country, in the world. Nothing's worse than the United States. Not one country's worse. It's here. It's and you have these nonsensical things. Well, you have a breach at your bank account, or we have a breach here in the United States. Do you know what Chris Krebs said with CISA? The famous comment that he said, him and horrible Bill Barr. But Chris Krebs says in December or November of 2020, we had the most secure election in the world, or in history. He said that. Now, months later, he got let go by CISA because of that false comment. But 3 months later, he was being interviewed on Morning Joe on MSNBC. Him and Adam Schiff, they asked him. Now, this is 3.5 months after the 2020 election. They said, "What's the biggest threat to the United States?" And you know what they said? They said, "A cyber attack right down to the local elections." Well, how did that change from the December 20 or the November 3rd election to there? And all of a sudden it's our biggest threat, but yet we had the most secure election. You don't think that this is what we're up against, but we've come a long way in 3 years, and we're going to finish this.
My name is Pam Bennett from American Happens Network, and my question is for Mike Lindell. I watch you daily, every day. I'm trying to get my doctorate in melting the machines. And I have a problem with the RNC, Turning Point, the Christian caucuses that are spreading voting early. And you tell us every day, don't do it. How do we get to President Trump or to Laura Trump to stop this ridiculousness so we don't lose again?
Oh, she asked you?
I tell the president that every day. He does not say to vote early. He has said straight up, the ones you're talking about are the RNC. The RNC last August voted 168-0 for same-day voting, paper ballots, hand counted. That was their resolution. So if you see any RNC or GOP member that stresses, let's vote early or ballot harvest like the Democrat, they are 1,000,000% wrong. We will lose our country. You vote same day, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, because it's harder for them to cheat. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of people on the ground that have studied every part of this, that have forgotten more about elections than most people ever know. We know 100%. This isn't maybe we should. No, 100%. Same day voting. Don't anyone ever tell you different. Well, Mike, they said at the RNC, the one person said to vote early. They're either misconstrued or they have no idea what they're talking about, or they're in on it. Because I thought you voted 168-0. I'm glad you brought that question up, because that one will get me. I will never stop saying that. And when what they did, that came out of Arizona when those 242 machines they shut off for Kari Lake. They made those lines long. Oh, gee, you better vote early, because look what could happen. They think they're going to win this with a traditional, let's campaign harder, let's pour money in. Oh, the RNC is finally going to put some money into election integrity? Rubbish. They don't know what election integrity, election crime is. That's why they lost 5 elections in a row. When I ran for RNC chair, you know what I said in my speech to them? I said, the first thing I do is fire every one of your lawyers. That's what I told them. And you bring that up. I ran for RNC. God told me to run. He didn't say I was going to win. And I'll tell you, the night before that election, the people voted in this country, and they did a vote. And they voted, I doubled Harmeet and Ronna McDaniel's votes. The next day, I got 4 votes, right? So here I am on Jimmy Kimmel, and he's mocking me, and he goes, well, Mike, he goes, you said you were going to win this, so I thought you were going to win, and you got 4 votes. And I said, well, Jimmy, the people voted, they wanted me voted in. And once again, the politicians did not listen to the people. These people in office did not listen to the people. And Jimmy goes, well, do you think it was a fair vote? I said, absolutely. It was paper ballots, hand counted.
Hi there, my name is Dave Riley, and I'm an independent journalist from North Idaho.
I had
and
a
it's-
quick response on that last.
Oh, go ahead.
Really, to it, early voting, great. Voting, the paper ballots in the mid-2000s, about a decade, I worked within the Chicago Board of Elections to get candidates on the ballot. And I saw a candidate named Tony Pareca for U.S. Senate. He actually was able to however he did it, and to where they were actually counting his ballots. And he saw them break into the ballot boxes and stealing votes from him. So we got to make sure we know how we're going to vote, count these votes. And when we talk about flaws, voting machines are huge. Restrictive ballot access barriers. Why is it over 900,000 signatures for an independent to get on the ballot for president when it's only 25 or 50,000 for Democrats and Republicans? Gerrymandering. We look at Dennis Kucinich, what happened to him? He got gerrymandered out. Proportional representation, over 80 more countries have it. Why don't we? Electoral college. And one of the biggest illusions, grand illusions of creating this myth of that there's only 2 parties is the closed commission on presidential debates. So reform is very much needed. Thank you, Mike, for taking a lead on bringing transparency in our elections. Thank you.
Mike, I could disagree with you on one thing. I think our elections are really, really secure. I've been trying to investigate them for years, and they won't let me in them. Yeah. So there.
I just want to quickly say that the answer to the last question about early voting and how do we stop that, and questions about how do we jettison the machines and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to just tell you it has to do with our numbers. If you have 5 Americans calling for something, nobody cares. If you have 500 million, and I know we don't have 500 million yet, but give it a couple of border days. If you have 500 million illegals saying, hey, we're going to have illegal votes, then you're not going to stop it very easily. So what I'm trying to get across is our numbers matter, people. We should have 2,000 in this room. And why don't we have the media here asking these questions? Because they're afraid of our answers.
50,000 watching on the live stream. Excellent news. Next question, unless anybody else wants to say.
All right, hi, my name is Dave Riley. I'm an independent journalist from North Idaho, and I guess this is a question to the panel, the elected officials. In Idaho in 1971, there was an in-depth investigation into government corruption. It turned out that Kootenai County Sheriff John Bender, who was appointed Idaho's top cop, was actually in bed with the mafia with a front company called Emprise Corporation. And there was a file that was produced after an investigation that was 2.5 inches thick. And in 1980, it was revealed that that file was thrown away by the FBI when Jimmy Carter wanted to appoint Cecil Landris Secretary of the Interior. So today, it seems like there is a similar level of corruption where we have public elected officials, be they sheriffs, governors, whatever, that are either cooperating with cartels or, let's say, pedophile trafficking rings, or even like the drag show story hour stuff that's been going on. It really seems like there's a fifth column in the American FBI, the JTTF, and in a lot of the sheriff's departments. And frankly, I'm at a point where I'm kind of scared to report on it because these people are very powerful. And so what can be done about that kind of corruption where you would have a corrupt judge hearing a corrupt affidavit from a corrupt FBI agent? How would you combat something like that, some sort of corrupt machine like that? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a very good question, because corruption should not be tolerated regardless of what level it is. Now, I explained earlier that we can investigate that, because I don't consider myself a corrupt sheriff. I consider myself a constitutional sheriff who owes my allegiance to the people that put me in office. They're my boss. So if I investigate a corrupt official, which, by the way, I've done and pressed charges, but guess what? Prosecutor give him a walk. Wouldn't do it. They even reached out to Walla Walla County, 4 counties away or so, because our current prosecutor knew the individual. Well, I'm not going to make it a secret. He's one of my county commissioners. Juvenile beer parties. A beer party at his Airbnb. In any event, you fight that, and you get the prosecutor not going to go along with it because politics, the good old boy system. But I'll tell you what works. We had this one prosecutor who I think has an axe to grind against me simply because I tried to file charges on him, or get the prosecutor to file charges. Then we have one other, we got a 3-member county commissioner board, right? So 2 of them, on March 29th, let me back up. The Tuesday meeting, they have public meetings. And they give a half hour for public comment, which is real big of them, since how they work for the public. Anyway, during that meeting, the chair lady of the 3 board member said that, Sheriff, we got an elephant in the room. We need to look at, I'm getting complaints about the jail. Well, I simply made a comment. If you're getting complaints about the jail or about the sheriff's office patrol, whatever it is, you refer those complaints to me. It's not your job to follow them up. It's mine. If they don't like my answer, they can sue me, recall me, or whatever they want to do, but I need to be, the buck stops at my desk on those complaints. Anyway, follow forward. March 29th, we're called to a public meeting, and during that public meeting, and by the way, nobody in the audience wasn't allowed to comment, none of them, which is kind of odd. But anyway, she came out and said that her and the other commissioner that has an axe to grind against me have decided by April 12th, now keep in mind this is March 29th, by April 12th, they're going to contract, they're going to move our prisoners from our jail across the river into Oregon at Norcor facility, and then they'd close the jail down by the end of the month. Blindsided us, boom. Even the 3rd commissioner was blindsided. They didn't even bring him on board. Well, I don't know. Being the cop I am, and obviously pissing me off, I did a little research and investigation myself. I happen to know the 4 sheriffs that sit on the Norcor board that runs this operation. They claim to get a contract with. They're in the process. They came over to my office and they said, Bob, we don't have a contract with them. We're not even close to having a contract. So they flat lied to the public and to the sheriff's office and had our employees, which 16 of them, they already started, the county and the union started to negotiate their separation from the job. So they create all this morale issue within the department, and they didn't even have a contract to carry it out by the 12th of April. And the sheriffs told, the two sheriffs on that board, said, Bob, they made an inquiry whether we rent beds, and we said yes, but there was nothing, absolutely nothing in concrete or even draft form to have a contract. In fact, they told me even if they were to contract with them, it would be 5 or 6 months before they'd have a contract together. So that's the kind of, in my humble opinion, the corruption, the backbiting, and the sniping that goes on in county government, city government, state government, and the federal government. So, as a constitutional sheriff, I owe my alliance to the citizens of my county, not to that board of county commissioners, not to the governor of our state, or the attorney general. The boss I have is the people, individual.
On your question about accountability, just like the sheriff said, it is frustrating, the existing system, and I'm not going to go down to a long rabbit trail for you, but I just want to put a plug for something called Tactical Civics, where they talk about a citizen grand jury established by the county commissioners, independent of the prosecutor's office, with the power to indict. There have been some success throughout the country with citizen grand juries being set up through that manner. So I won't go down a rabbit trail with you, but look up Tactical Civics. There's two parts to it: citizen grand jury and citizen militia, so that if you have a sheriff that's not constitutional, the people can then actually make the arrest. And this is established by the authority of elected officials, your county commissioners. So it's not just me and my 5 best friends calling ourselves a militia or a grand jury. This is established by elected commissioners. Tactical Civics is something to consider. Now, do we have time to establish that throughout the country? It seems like the clock's running out, but it is a way to put power back in the hands of the people and act independent of a corrupt system, where it's often a corrupt system. So Tactical Civics, a little plug for them.
I think we've all identified that obviously the foundation of it doesn't matter if it's fentanyl, it doesn't matter if it's trafficking, it doesn't matter if it's machines. I mean, the list goes on. Corruption happening in the courts across the board. We can identify it as evil. And I think I communicated this today, but I want to re-communicate this in the atmosphere here, is that if we don't figure out as the church to make sure we erase the line between religion and politics, because that needs to go bye-bye. The whole Bible is about kings and nations, and the Word of God makes it clear that when the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. But look at what's happening right now. And so I want to challenge every one of us to, we've got to identify that. We're doing a great job identifying it as a spiritual issue, but again, if our freedoms were developed and established through the moral code of God's Word, but yet we don't have the pastors on board to reestablish the foundation of this nation, that is where the problem lies. We need pastors, we need intercessors to get on their face. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves, you know the verse, I don't want to go through it, but we would turn from our wicked ways. God makes us a promise. When we repent, He's going to heal the land. So this is all a byproduct of division that's happened in churches. We're seeing division across court systems, even throughout law enforcement. The list goes on. And so even within the camera, I'm speaking to any pastor that might be listening. We have 0 time left. We've got to mobilize now. We've got to move now. We've got to get unified now. And we've got to recognize, let me give you just a couple of quick examples. When I pastored in Lordsburg, New Mexico, the suicide rate at the time was extreme. I believe they were communicating 2 to 3 suicides a month. What we did, you can come up with 15 programs, or you can get on your face and begin to wage war against the powers of hell in the name of Jesus Christ and get the job done. So we mobilized around the city. We went to the exact spot where there was a spiritual drawing point where people were committing suicide. We began to pray, plead the blood of Jesus, and we saw the suicide rate shift immediately. And so it doesn't matter if it's corruption in the courts. The list goes on. Evil is evil. We're identifying it as evil, but we're going to have a solution beyond what we can do. I know that law enforcement are ministers according to the Word of God, but we've got to get on our faces. We've got to pray. We've got to pull down the corruption. The Bible makes it clear This is going to make an attempt to prevail in the last days. But again, the greatest threat to this system is the church of the Lord Jesus Christ. Me and the sheriff's story is not a story of a little bit of defeat and then we made a comeback. We whipped the devil from the day we decided we're not shutting this church down. When state police came, we won. When all hell broke loose and the governor didn't like it, it made it to her office, we continued to win. There was not one moment when we didn't win. And so we've got to get to a place where winning becomes the new normal.
Thank you. I wanted to address the FBI from the top ranks and the DOJ. And I'd take you back to Robert Mueller when he was the director of the FBI. And we had terrorist threats that were pretty heavy at that period of time. And he gave the order to go through all the FBI documents and scrub out anything that was derogatory towards Muslims. And so the agents had to operate without that information, without the opposition research that should have been there. That was one of the things that Mueller did. And also, he consolidated the power at the top at the national office. Prior to that time, the agent, a special agent in charge, ran their domain. With about maybe 11 of them across the country. I don't remember how many it was exactly. And investigations started with the special agent in charge. They decided whether to do the investigation and to investigate. If they needed help from another area, they asked for it. If they went to the national office for help, they asked for it. What Mueller did was took that authority all the way from the special agents in charge, stacked it up in the national office, scrubbed the agents out, and put his own people in that were not FBI legacy. And so he controlled it from the top down, and investigations had to get permission at the national office before they could move forward. And then they got controlled and throttled. So here's how some of these things happen. And you know what James Comey did to ambush Mike Flynn. That was an FBI operation. It was a sting operation. And I think by now most people in the country know that. But I'm looking back to when Hillary Clinton was under the most highly profiled investigation, questioning interview that they did of any time in the history of this country. And I had James Comey and Loretta Lynch and Peter Strzok all in front of me at different times under oath. And so you know how that came out, where Comey gave his 17-minute speech, and the first 15 minutes you were sure that they were going to bring charges, and the last 2 minutes he made up the reasons that they actually spoke words into law, never intend to. But I asked the Attorney General Loretta Lynch, when you questioned Hillary Clinton, when she was questioned, who was in the room? And she said, I don't know. And then I said, how many were FBI and how many were DOJ? She said, I think it was 4-4. Well, are you sure about that? I think it's 4-4. Who made the decisions on who'd be in there? I don't really know. And that was that bad. James Comey, same questions. He thought it was 5-3, but he didn't know who it was either. And so I asked Reagan's Attorney General, Ed Meese III, I said, if you're Attorney General and you have that high profile of an investigation going on, what's the chances that you wouldn't know who's there to ask those questions from the DOJ and the FBI? What are the odds? Ed, being a wise man, didn't answer me in words. He just went like this, and he didn't mean white power. No chance that an Attorney General wouldn't know who was on in that room. So those two lied to me under oath, and I got to Peter Strzok and said, who was in the room? And he said, I was. At least I got an honest answer out of that guy, and now we know that. But we didn't get a single other name, but it was all stacked, and Hillary got to have her chief of staff and another staffer in there, and they each should have been separated for that investigation. So this is corrupt at the top, but the culture of the FBI and the DOJ has matriculated down through the ranks. We can no longer say all these agents below the top ranks are all good. They aren't anymore. A lot of good ones were muzzled. And the one that identified the Burisma corruption that was going on, he had like 15 different informants that he called, I think it was 10 informants cultivated for 15 years, something like that. And when he brought that information forward, they warehoused him. And that's the thing that happens to good agents. So we've got a culture to fix in both those places, and State Department, CIA, and others. But I just wanted to put that in, especially FBI. They changed the structure, and that enabled them to run it from the top down.
If I can just add one thing to your question. Corruption at any level needs to be investigated. I agree with this gentleman here when he said, how do we get the media sources that are out there, independent or otherwise, to connect and to network with sheriffs? Every state, and we use this a lot in New Mexico, every state has one major network in one of the big cities that always has an investigative reporter somewhere. If you have credible information that you have a local corrupted official who is tied in with either cartel or again, you have credible information. The best way to get that out there is from an honest newsman. I know that's an oxymoron in some cases. There are those news networks out there that are looking for those type of stories. If you have that evidence, you have a responsibility to bring that forward and shed some light onto that.
Just a real quick comment. I didn't mean to hog the mic. Back on my story about the county commissioners closing down the jail by April 12th, when I found out that they had no contract, they were running a bluff and caused a lot of morale issues in our department. What happened though, the following Friday, I think it was Friday, after they bombarded us, over 300 citizens showed up, and far majority had 200 and some people standing in the commissioner's hearing area, and had them downstairs in another hearing area on the big TV and stuff. But there's only about 4 people that supported the commissioners closing the jail down and contracting across the river. All the rest of the testimony was talk about recalling them and talk about they did not want our jail closed down. So leading up to that, the gentleman that made a comment here, you know what politicians don't like when they're wrong? A lot of public attention. Get it out to the public. And they don't want to ride the heat. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
We really want to leave unless there's something here that we've already promised you. Real quick. No, this is the last question.
Thank you for all of your hearts, for doing what's right.
I feel the same way. This is a real good group of people.
Yeah, it really is. It's good to see, finally see. My name is Michael Proper. I've been in the technology world my whole life. I have focused the last 13 years on decentralized technology. I've been to a lot of events similar to these. I hear a lot about the problems, as I think we all do. But what if there were solutions to all of this? If I were to take a poll on NPS score, a 0 to 10, on how you guys all felt about technology, is it listening to you? Is it adding value in your life? Is it profiling you? Is it owning you? I bet you the score would be maybe, on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe a 3. But what if there was a solution to be able to provide a voice to the individual, to be able to provide transparency in voting, to be able to the question is, if there was a solution, would you pay attention to it?
Of course, yeah, of course. We're the group that's the solution. I saw a solution today. A pastor and a sheriff got up here and showed us, without question, what the solution is. Are there more? And am I open to others? Absolutely. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your sincerity, and you get it to us at CSPOA. I'll get it to Mike Lindell or whoever else it needs to go to up here, and we'll reconvene. But well, we could ask the sheriffs. I'm very familiar with the possibility of martial law. Martial law is not in the Constitution, and I have told every sheriff to have your county so prepared that if the federal government comes in the county and try to implement martial law, that you're so prepared, you tell him, go to the next county, we don't need you here. But I think that would be one. Maybe that's too simplistic, but at the same time, the sheriff's in charge. He's in charge. Yeah. Well, who can declare it? So I would think that the governor and the president would be the ones in line there, but if the governor says no, or if the sheriff says no, then it's no. So, yeah, and when was the last time a president declared martial law in America? It's been a long time, even for the stupid ones, you know, which is almost all of them. Folks, we're going to draw this to a close. I see that some of you are about as tired as I am, but I do want to echo what people have said about this great panel. I love these people, and I'm thrilled that this was a successful day. I was disappointed a little bit in the crowd right here because this one got a lot more, we got a lot more calls, and we only had, the people that registered, only half of them came. And so, but when I found out how many were live streaming on Frank's speech, I was thrilled, and I've been happy ever since. This is the biggest thing we've had in a long time. So thank all of you. Thank you. Good night.